Chapter 21. The Run. Most mornings Todd would roll out of bed. Feet touched the cold wooden floor, sending a brief chill up his spine. The familiar sensation grounded him in the reality of his daily routine. Before heading to the bathroom, he glanced at the array of medals, commendations, and photos that lined his dresser, each a testament to his dedication and sacrifices he'd made during his military service. They served as a daily reminder of why he'd given so much of himself to his country. His next stop was the kitchen. Even though he no longer had to eat in a mess hall or field camp, he still kept his breakfast simple: a bowl of oatmeal, a piece of fruit, and a strong cup of black coffee. While the coffee brewed, he would often sit by the window and watch the world come to life outside. Birds chirped their morning songs, and the first rays of sunlight began to creep over the horizon, casting a golden hue over everything. As he ate, Todd would often reflect on his service and the many comrades he'd met along the way. Some had become lifelong friends, while others had paid the ultimate price. These memories were bittersweet, filled with pride, camaraderie, and loss. Yet they shaped him into the disciplined, resilient individual he had become. Post-breakfast, Todd would often take a brisk morning run. The fresh air and exercise helped clear his mind and set the tone for the day. Despite leaving the structured world of the military, he found solace in maintaining a regimented routine. It was familiar, comforting, and gave him a sense of purpose in civilian life. While the world around him might have changed since his days in uniform, Todd's dedication, discipline, and the memories of his service remained ever present, guiding his actions and decisions every day. Waking up early in the morning had become a natural occurrence for Todd. This morning began as many did, with a ritualistic stretch in bed to ease his tense muscles and joints. Serving in the military had demanded every ounce of his dedication and strength. Whenever a chance arose for advanced training, he was always at the forefront, eager to enroll. His impeccable service record ensured he was accepted every time, no questions asked. The structure and discipline of the military had been his anchor, but now it felt like he was adrift. No amount of training had equipped him for the uncertainty of the civilian realm. Waking up without a clear mission or a set objective each day left a void in Todd's life. He was molded for service, to stand for his country. But recent downsizing meant he was no longer part of that world, a decision that gnawed at him every day. Each morning for the past 6 months he replayed the moment in his mind, the day he stood before his commanding officer and heard the words that changed the trajectory of his life. "You're being discharged." "With all my training and experience, why me?" Todd asked the silent room around him, even though he knew there would be no reply. Within a few minutes, as Todd turned his body to begin the day, the question repeated itself in his mind like a scratched record. Standing in front of the toilet and relieving the pressure from his bladder, Todd peered through a small window into the darkness concealing the forest beyond. He imagined troops marching by on their way to morning physical training, calling out cadences as they marched in step. He could almost hear it as if it were real.
Mama, mama, can't you see? Mama, mama, can't you see? What the army's done to me? What the army's done to me? Mama, mama, can't you see? Mama, mama, can't you see? What the army's done to me? What the army's done to me? Put me on a silver jet. Put me on a silver jet. And that's a ride I won't forget. That's a ride I won't forget.
Once he flushed, the daydream ended, and it was back to civilian life. To Todd, there was nothing sadder than a soldier without a mission. Every morning, Todd donned his military PT uniform, the one piece of his past that still felt right. When he tightened the reflective belt around his waist, he felt a pang of nostalgia. Looking in the bathroom mirror, the familiar reflection gave him a semblance of the life he once had. Yet there was one change: the stubble that now covered his once smooth chin. Growing it out was supposed to help him blend into civilian life, but each day the urge to shave it off grew stronger. He brushed his fingers through the coarse hair, took a deep breath, and sighed, grappling with the changes he saw both in the mirror and in his life. Looking down at his uniform as he made his way into the kitchen provided Todd with a little encouragement. He felt that he was still in the same great shape, if not better, mostly from the longer workouts. When the workout was over, he wouldn't be putting on his uniform for the day. Rather, he'd be wearing jeans and a t-shirt. As he readied the coffee maker, the same thought brightened his morning as it did every other. At least the coffee was better. With the timer set, he began his workout with stretching in the living room. This was the only part he disliked, although he had learned long ago that he needed it as the years passed. After 10 minutes, his body was ready for his morning run to begin, and Todd was looking forward to it. With his new home located in the Ozarks, the run provided him with hills to conquer, great scenery, animals and fresh air. Now that it was springtime, Todd hoped the scenery would be even better with dogwoods blooming and birds chirping. On his way through the house to the back door, Todd always made the same stop. The one thing he couldn't have on all the military facilities he had traveled to were his weapons, and now that he could, he had many. Todd peered into his ultimate man cave just to ensure everything was as it should be. As with every other day, this was going to be his next activity, reloading brass picked up from the range the night before, to ensure that it was cleaned and ready. Todd flipped the switch of the new tumbler system, which had arrived the day before. With everything in its place, he high-stepped to begin the run. As Todd went through the door and jogged down the driveway, the cool valley air hit his skin, creating goosebumps and standing his hair up like little rockets preparing for takeoff. The scent of spring rushed through his nostrils with every breath and filled him with its soothing aroma. In the distance, light was breaking over the horizon, creating a carnival of colors. This is what he had hoped for. With Todd's eyes focused on the brilliant lights, a rush of energy filled him. Every step brought more speed, as if he were chasing the light before it was gone. Soon the colors would fade away as the sun struggled to overtake the darkness. As dawn broke, the brilliance of the dogwood blooms came into full view, contrasting starkly with the dormant trees surrounding them. With each mile, the landscape seemed to burst with color, a short-lived spectacle that Todd knew all too well. It pained him to think that in a matter of days, those delicate petals would cascade down, surrendering to nature's cycle, waiting for another year to blossom again. The crisp morning air invigorated Todd as he jogged. With every stride, perspiration dampened his shirt until it was saturated. He continued his rhythm, placing one foot in front of the other, losing himself in the sensation of cool wind against his skin. As his home was just over a mile away, this stretch always pushed him to his limits, urging him to accelerate. This time his calm was shattered by the sudden roar of engines. Vehicles in tight formation sped past, disrupting his concentration. Instinctively he halted, his attention drawn to the speeding convoy. A familiar unease settled in his stomach when he spotted the distinct blue UN emblem on one of the white Hummers. They pulled sharply into his neighbor's driveway. Bewildered, he wondered why the Conways would be visited by the United Nations and what business they had stateside. Shaking off his surprise, Todd resumed his pace, now with heightened awareness. The closer he came to Conway's drive, the stronger the twinge in his gut became. Without warning, Todd could hear the unmistakable sound of Roy Conway's scream, "I'll be damned." It was then followed by the report of shotgun fire. The shot was followed by automatic fire, which was clearly not Roy's. As he watched, Todd realized that he was no longer on his feet, but had taken cover in the ditch running along the highway. From that position, he watched as soldiers in blue and black uniforms rushed into the Conways' home. Then once again he heard a short burst of automatic fire. Focusing on what remained of Roy's body, Todd couldn't register what he had just witnessed. Todd watched as the soldiers carried the few firearms the Conways owned out to their Hummers. Before they placed the firearms inside the vehicles, Todd also watched as one held up the weapons while another seemed to be looking at a clipboard. "My God," Todd said to himself, "it's a checklist." Todd quickly turned on his belly and low crawled to the woods in hopes of not being seen. The only thing on his mind was getting back home. As he crawled deeper into the woods, the image of what had just occurred kept playing in his thoughts. Todd had stopped watching TV and listening to the news months ago. None of it made sense to the way he saw the world, so his solution had been to not play the game. Crawling on his belly through the woods with rocks cutting and bruising his body, Todd wished he had. Now deep into the woodland, Todd quickly leaped to his feet and ran, moving through the forest as if returning a game-winning kick in the Super Bowl. Moving around a tree here, dodging a limb there, and running with every bit of energy and muscle strength that could be summoned. Then a thought struck him. Am I next? The thought commanded his body to move faster, but it failed. There was simply no more speed to be had. With glimpses of his home in sight from between the trees, Todd's speed began to reduce to a jog. His eyes focused on the driveway as more of it came into view. Todd watched for the slightest sign of the UN vehicles and felt lucky that they weren't there. His speed was once again restored. Bursting from the forest, Todd ran for the backsliding doors located at the rear of his home. Leaping upon the deck and sliding it to one side before a second foot was planted, he was home. But his home no longer felt as a home should. Now standing where he had been stretching just 30 minutes ago, the one thought Todd had was to get moving. Once again he moved with all the speed he had left to his man cave. Normally entering the room brought him ease. Now there was only concern. Concern that he might not be able to get everything loaded in his truck before they showed. Todd grabbed his rifles, pistols, and ammunition, making trip after trip to his truck. It seemed to have no end. Get moving, Todd thought as he looked at what was left in the room, but he knew there wouldn't be time. One last thing. Todd reached out and grabbed his body armor and sprinted from the room and out through the door leading into the garage where his truck was waiting. He entered his truck and seat behind the steering wheel. He placed the pistol in his hand on the cup holder next to him and took a breath, wondering if he was overreacting. After a few seconds, Todd thought, if I am, then this will just be a nice drive. Reaching up to the visor and striking the button of the garage door remote, Todd started the truck while he waited for the garage door to open. Inch by slow inch, the garage door opened, and then Todd's question was answered as the door opened to reveal Boots. Grabbing the pistol to his side with one hand and opening his driver's door with the other, Todd felt instinct take over. After witnessing what had happened to the Conway family, Todd had already concluded there would be no talking to the soldiers, so he went limp and dropped to the concrete floor, rolling and firing. Rounds from his Glock 17 flew true and struck the first two men in the legs. As the two fell, Todd directed his fire to the others who were advancing from the second vehicle. As some bullets struck home and others struck the concrete where he once had been, Todd was on his feet, moving and firing more rounds into the two who were holding their legs. After dropping his pistol, Todd began sending rounds from a now-deceased man's rifle before the pistol made contact with the ground. Todd placed rounds in the neck of one man just above his vest. As Todd's last round made contact, he pointed his weapon to what he hoped was the last of them. With his hands going up and his rifle falling to the ground, the man yelled with a thick French accent, "Don't shoot, don't shoot! Then don't move!" The threat was made that much more believable by the tone in which it was delivered, not as a yell but in a calm, cool, gruff voice which made all three words sound as one. The message was received. Now what am I going to do with this guy? Todd thought to himself. In the garage, Todd ordered, and signaled with his rifle pointing the direction he wanted the man to move, just in case the man's English wasn't up for the challenge. Walking slowly to ensure that he made no sudden movement, the UN soldier neared the entrance of the garage with Todd directly behind him. Soon as the first of the soldier's boots passed the threshold, the man felt a blinding pain in the back of his skull. Quickly, his world darkened as he felt himself falling forward. Behind him, Todd whipped off the rifle's buttstock where it had made contact with the back of the man's head. With the man's forehead bouncing up from the concrete floor with a strong bass tone, Todd puckered his face. Oh, wow. He's going to feel that when he wakes up, Todd thought, and shook his head as he walked over to the Humvees. Grabbing radios, weapons, notebooks, and IDs, Todd went quickly through everything in the truck and moved the corpse from his path. One last glance at the area, and he had his answer to the question he had asked of himself not 5 minutes ago. No, you are definitely not overreacting, Todd said to himself, using the same gruff voice as earlier. Walking back to the truck, Todd looked down at the blood covering the concrete and felt laughter coming. I am not cleaning that up, Todd thought. Then Todd jumped in and started the 4x4, only to look down and realize he was still wearing his PT uniform. Without wasting any more time, he exited the truck, ran through to the far end of his closet, and ripped his uniform from its hanger. Todd didn't choose his most recent uniform. He hated the digital grey with a passion. Rather, he chose his old BDUs from his first years in the service,